Hello there, my audience watching this right now. I'm your host, Adric Zhang, and this is Crash Course Literature, where you can learn different features of literature quickly and efficiently. Have you ever felt in awe of the many imperfections of our world? Maybe you have felt that the world standard of your perfection is getting more and more suffocating, and that sometimes, no, many times, imperfection can be what makes us unique and beautiful. That even as sinners, we can have happiness as long as we embrace our imperfections instead of being something we are not. Today, we are going to discuss a free verse poem called Living Space by Imtiaz Darker, exactly about this theme of imperfection. Darker was writing about the living spaces in poorer communities such as shanty towns, based off her time in the slums of Mumbai. She is depicting the fragility, frailness, and unkemptness of the homes here and is in awe of how it's possible for people to live here with such limited resources. First of all, allow me to explain to you what a free verse poem is and how the writer carries it out. A free verse poem is a poem in which the writer does not use rhyme in their writing or arrange their rhythm in a repetitive manner. It does not use normal rhyming sequences such as A, B, B, or A, B, A, B. An example of a popular poem written in free verse is When I Heard the Learned Astronomer by Walt Whitman. An interesting reason why Darker chose to write this poem in free verse is to physically relay her emotion and exaggerate her feeling upon witnessing the imperfect structures of the slums of Mumbai. There are three parts to the structure of this poem. The first part is written to be very messy and has many enjambed lines to relay the messiness meaning of its diction. Instead of having even lines like these, like a traditional poem would, it's written messily like this in the enjambed lines way. Although the first and third stanzas are both odes, interestingly, the second paragraph is short and straight to the point, squeezed by two odes. It is on purpose to relay the squeezed-in emotion of its short but sweet diction. Into this rough frame, someone has squeezed a living space. The third stanza is full of allegories, which means a phrase with two meanings, one of them unstated but implied. Darker was hoping to give the reader hope after reading the first stanza full of enjambed lines and the squeezed second stanza. The third stanza has 5 allegories in total. After discussing about structure, let's discuss about the meanings implied by the 3 different stanzas in the poem. As I mentioned earlier, this poem is stating how in a place with so little resources and buildings made of scrap, there can still be a squeezed community of people if they have faith in their community. The soul of a town is not the town itself, but the people living in it. The first stanza of the poem uses a lot of negative diction such as not enough, nothing, crooked, and dangerous to convey a negative situation from the jumbled up poor community. The author did not really present the situation straightforwardly, but makes the reader think of another layer. For example, instead of saying messy, it says, just not enough straight lines, nothing is flat or parallel. Instead of saying flimsy, it says, beams bounce crookedly on supports, leans dangerously. The second stanza is quite straightforward. It is about people being squeezed in a small living space. The third stanza is implying how the residents of this slum can live in such a dire situation if they have the courage to keep faith like mentioned in the last 2 lines, gathering the light into themselves as if they were the bright thin walls of faith. Let's compare this poem to other poems such as Tonight I Can Write the Saddest Lines by Pablo Neruda and Sonnet 43 by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. While the structure of the poem Living Space is free verse, the style for Pablo Neruda's poem is similar to free verse in a way that there's no rhyme, while Sonnet 43 is a sonnet. While freestyle has no particular structure, A sonnet is traditionally a poem of 14 lines with a number of rhymes and having 10 syllables per line. A sonnet has very strict rules, while free verse is very free. They are like polar opposites. As you can see, another polar opposite between Sonnet 43 and Living Space is that the speaker of Sonnet 43 is speaking love about someone they admire, almost as if the speaker sees the subject of the sonnet as perfect, so it is about perfection, while Living Space is about imperfection. Tonight I Can Write the Saddest Lines is more similar to Living Space because it is about negative sentiment. Thank you for listening. Once again, I would like to remind you that structure-wise, this is a free verse poem with 3 different stanzas that the writer efficiently uses different structures for each stanza to convey emotions that Darker wants to instill in her reader effectively. This is a great poem because Darker uses her writing so well, it can inflict different emotions in the reader at specific times through structure and diction. But it is also great because it teaches us the state in which the poorer community live in. Thanks for watching Crash Course Literature. I'll see you next week.